Following the suspicious deaths of Gene Hackman and his second wife, Betsy Arakawa, all eyes are on Hackman's 3 adult children.
Finally breaking their silence after years of silence, Gene Hackman's 3 children are revealing a stunning truth: not to respect their father's legacy. The woman who remained by his side right up until he passed away was a mystery. Who was she? Why is it that every account of the Hollywood icon has completely ignored her? Mysteries shrouded in secrecy, disturbing final remarks, and a revelation that may alter our whole understanding of Gene Hackman. What transpired, and why did his family remain silent for so long? The next disclosures are about to shock the public, so brace yourself. Among Hollywood's all-time greats, Gene Hackman was known for his unforgettable performances in films and television shows. Classics like The Royal Tenenbaums, Unforgiven, and The French Connection all include his iconic performances. However, Hackman's personal life was closely guarded while he was not in the public eye. He made sure his loved ones were never in the spotlight. But after Hackman and Betsy Arakawa passed away, their children Christopher, Elizabeth, and Leslie finally spoke publicly about the immense grief they were experiencing. Not only did they want to honor their parents by dressing the part, but they also wanted to keep in memory the people who had been there for them through thick and thin. The year 1966 saw the birth of Gene Hackman's youngest daughter, Leslie Ann Hackman. Unlike her renowned father, who made millions of screen appearances, Leslie opted for a low-key existence away from the scrutiny of the media. On this occasion, though, she could not function in the dark. Her eyes reflected her anguish and strength as she made an appearance in Los Angeles. She spoke to the reporters while sobbing and said, "We need time. Gathering data from law enforcement is now necessary. Having to go back to that place and confront everything was something none of us could have anticipated. But yes, we will go to New Mexico." Those were more than simply words. They were a path to understanding the reality. The anguish of returning to a house that was once filled with memories of one's parents, but is now nothing more than an infinite emptiness, is indescribable. Elizabeth Hackman is Gene Hackman's second daughter. She was born in 1962. While she, like her sister, preferred to avoid the limelight of Hollywood, she felt compelled to speak out at this pivotal juncture. We announced the loss of our father, Gene Hackman, and our stepmother, Betsy, with profound grief. Leslie and Annie, Elizabeth's niece, also released a heartfelt statement. Even though he was a legendary figure adored by millions, we always thought of him as a doting grandpa and father. We are profoundly grieved by his passing and shall miss him. While the general world saw Gene Hackman as a cinematic legend, his children saw him as nothing more than a wonderful dad, and that is the memory they hope to leave behind. Gene Hackman's first marriage to Faye Maltz produced Christopher Hackman, who was born in 1960, the sole son. No glitz, no movies, no limelight. Christopher went on a very different direction than his famous father. Away from the spotlight, he had a low-key existence. Christopher had a unique bond with his father, even though the latter was rarely seen in public. "We still hug each other to this day, and I thank God for that," Gene Hackman stated in an interview from 1984. This revelation reveals that, although not often acknowledging it in public, the father-son bond between Gene and Christopher was always strong. There has been an enormous hole in the film business and an unquenchable anguish in the lives of Gene Hackman's loved ones ever since his death. His children will carry their love and memories of their father with them wherever they go, even though he is no longer physically there. An official statement was swiftly issued by the Hackman family following the loss of Betsy and Gene. For them, this served as an act of memorialization and an outlet for their sorrow at the loss. The statement highlighted Gene Hackman's dedication to his family, saying that despite his fame, he was a doting grandpa and father. Although Hackman was known to the world as an exceptional actor, his loved ones always remembered him as an unassuming, reserved, and kind man. Betsy Arakawa may not have been a big name, but she was Gene Hackman's most valuable colleague. Arakawa was a gifted classical pianist who spent almost 30 years by Hackman's side, even after he retired from acting to enjoy his golden years. They had a great marriage, and I thank Betsy for keeping my father well, Leslie Hackman said, making sure to include his stepmother. She was quite worried about his well-being and cared for him extensively. Her departure has left me feeling both grateful and devastated. Betsy Hackman was more than just Gene Hackman's wife. She was also his rock in his twilight years. Even though they are no longer with us, the Hackman family will always hold their memories dear. Beloved family and friends of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa have lost a beloved figure, but their children's heartfelt tributes show that Gene's memory will endure. Even though they are still hurting, the Hackman family will be strong enough to remember Gene Hackman and his legacy with love and togetherness. The image of Gene Hackman that most people see when they hear the name comes from his iconic roles in films. However, in reality, Gene was a kind husband and lover who discovered true peace through his love for Betsy Arakawa. He first crossed paths with Betsy in the late 80s, during his prime working years. Classical pianist Betsy was 30 years younger than Gene. She was of Hawaiian descent. Contrary to expectations, the apparent disparity in age, background, and life experiences really served to strengthen their bond. Gene Hackman's first marriage, to Faye Maltz, had lasted over 30 years when he met Betsy. Betsy was like a breath of fresh air when he met her. She brought him the kindness, compassion, and tenderness he never knew he would need when his previous marriage ended. They had a fantastic marriage, as Leslie Hackman said in an interview. Betsy has my eternal gratitude for being my father's rock, providing selfless care and brightening his golden years. Life with Betsy was very different from his previous marriage, during which Gene was very involved in his job and frequently traveled for it. Gene started taking it easy and spending more time with his family once they were married in 1991. He made the decision to retire from Hollywood in 2004 so he and his wife could live a quiet life together. In addition to being Gene Hackman's wife, Betsy was a trusted confidant and friend who helped him unwind after a successful career. Honor. Betsy was close to Gene Hackman and served as both his wife and confidant. She was there for him for almost 30 years because she had an uncanny understanding of him that few others had. Together, after the star power of his work waned, Gene was just an elderly guy relishing in his golden years. Taking care of him and walking behind him at all times was Betsy. Gene was able to keep his health and mental clarity for a long time because of her commitment, which was both a sacrifice and an act of love. Betsy really helped my father stay healthy, his daughter Leslie said with tears at one point. She was really concerned about his well-being and made sure he got enough to eat and sleep so that he could keep his mind sharp for a very long period. The death of Betsy had a profound effect on Gene Hackman. The lady who had supported him through the highs and lows of his life for over 3 decades was suddenly gone. Nothing could ever make up for the immense hole she left behind. Even though Gene was not a frequent public presence, his friends and family saw a marked decline in his outspokenness. The once strong and resolute actor felt more alone than ever. I knew my father had changed after Betsy died, not because he was weak, but because he had lost an important part of his life, Elizabeth, Gene's second daughter, said in an interview. My father was always a very steadfast person. Even if Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa aren't physically here anymore, the story of their love is a testament to the power of a loving relationship. There was no need for fancy language to describe the quiet, meaningful affection that flowed from one person to another. Rather, it was a love so profound that it touched the hearts of all around it. Even though Gene and Betsy have both passed away, the memories of their joyous marriage live on in the hearts of their loved ones. Betsy was not only Gene's wife, but also his companion in his final years. The once warm house that had been Betsy's sanctuary became icy in the days following her passing. All the familiar things were still there. The pictures of them together adorning the wall, the piano that Betsy would play in the late afternoons, and the books that Gene would read endlessly perched on the shelf. But suddenly, there was an eerie quietness. It was unexpected that the Hackman family would have to endure another heartbreaking loss so soon. At first, the family just said that Betsy had died of natural causes. They did not go into specifics about the cause of death. However, many were taken aback by the revelation of the reality. Betsy succumbed to her pulmonary syndrome, an exceptionally uncommon and life-threatening illness. The virus, which is mostly transmitted by rats, can lead to severe respiratory distress. Damage to the lungs becomes worse as the disease advances, eventually causing respiratory failure and death. Worst of all, the disease can advance at a breakneck pace, often within days after the onset of symptoms. Since Betsy had no significant medical history and had been active and healthy up until a few weeks before she became ill, the idea that such a rare disease might kill her was inconceivable. When the illness finally did arrive, it was brutal, abrupt, and merciless, like a hurricane. There was an immediate and profound loss for everyone who knew and loved the woman who had devoted her life to care for Gene Hackman. Even though Gene Hackman was already dead when Betsy passed away, he spent his last years obscured by disease. His memories were jumbled, people were new to him, and discussions were half-hearted as he fought against heart illness and advancing Alzheimer's. His kids thought Dad might not be mentally stable enough to understand that Betsy had abandoned him for good. After his wife passed away, he stopped talking about her or asking about her as much. Instead, he sat silently for hours at a time, staring out the window, as if looking for something undefined. Leslie Hackman broke down in tears as she explained that her father's inability to recognize the loss of the person he loved most was more terrible than the loss itself. Just like a piece of his memory had slipped away with Betsy, he stayed silent, neither crying nor wondering. However, that was not the end of the tragedy. Gene Hackman also passed away a few days after Betsy. Age and Alzheimer's had taken their toll on his health, which had already been deteriorating, and his heart condition had only become worse. The world of Hollywood and the actor's devoted followers were stunned to hear of his death. The Hackman family, however, suffered the loss of a husband, father, and grandpa in addition to a famous celebrity. "We had barely gotten over Betsy's passing when Gene was gone too," Elizabeth Hackman said, her voice trailing off in sorrow. "We feel trapped in this nightmare," she finally said. Gene and Betsy opted for a low-key existence, away from the limelight of Hollywood, to share in the basic joys of life for a long time. However, now that they were both gone, there was an eternal emptiness for Gene's children. For Leslie, Elizabeth, and Christopher Hackman, the loss of their father and stepmother at the same time was a devastating blow. Not only did they lose two best friends, but they also had to figure out how to live without the individuals who had always been there for them, like family. "We always thought we had more time," Christopher, the eldest son of Gene, stated during an interview. "Their time with us flew by, and we regretted not capturing more of our memories. Because of time constraints, we were unable to adequately prepare or express ourselves." Even though Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa are no longer with us, their fans, relatives, and friends will always remember them. Their devotion to one another, the joy they brought to each other's lives, and the path they traveled together throughout the years are evidence of a love that knows no bounds, not even death. Even though the Hackmans are still adjusting to life without Gene and Betsy, they hold on to the belief that no matter where they are never truly alone. Never one to brag, Gene Hackman always allowed his work do the talking. He may be out of the limelight now, but his effect on cinema and subsequent generations will be felt for years to come. Gene Hackman was a modest and gifted man, and his children grew up in his shadow. They got that his legacy was about more than simply movies. It was a concept of humility and tenacity. He always prioritized tenacity over stardom, according to Christopher Hackman, his eldest son. Despite his distaste for ostentation, his acting career was significant enough that he merited recognition. Because of this, his three children made a number of plans to continue their father's work and uphold his principles. The video exhibition, Hackman, A Moving Legacy, is one of the initial endeavors. It will showcase his legendary works, unique behind-the-scenes photos, and priceless career artifacts. The youngest daughter, Leslie Hackman, revealed that her father enjoyed nothing more than hearing people talk about movies. Fans were able to share their sentiments and views regarding Hackman's works, and the event also welcomed Hackman's colleagues. Along with the exhibition, Gene Hackman's children are filming a documentary series in which they interview several of his collaborators in the film industry, including Dustin Hoffman, Clint Eastwood, and even younger actors who have been inspired by Hackman's work. Beyond his iconic film appearances, Gene Hackman has left an indelible impression. His father was a severe yet caring figure, and few people knew that. His family came first, and he held integrity in the highest regard. Keeping his name and the principles he upheld throughout his life alive are two aspects of his legacy that his children will work to preserve. Even though Gene Hackman has been absent from film for quite some time, his legacy lives on. In an effort to carry on his legacy, his children and grandchildren spoke about their father as an artist who was committed to his work and who stood up for what he believed in. Gene Hackman's second daughter, Elizabeth, fondly recalls her father as a rigorous but caring parent. He would often use stories, both based on his own experiences in Hollywood and those of the characters he played, to teach his children. The Hackman kids saw their dad's film roles as more than just an artistic expression. They were an integral element of their family's daily lives. He instilled in them the values of justice and accountability in his role as a stern police officer in The French Connection. He demonstrated how unbridled power can corrupt individuals in his role as Superman's nemesis. Even though Hackman is no longer physically there to impart these life lessons to his three children, they have carried them on in his stead. Although Gene Hackman has been absent from movies for quite some time, he continues to have a significant impact on the business. Christian Bale, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Jake Gyllenhaal are just a few of the actors who have mentioned him as an influence. Children of Hackman are thinking of starting a scholarship foundation to help aspiring actors get their start. According to Christopher Hackman, his father instilled in him the value of perseverance and commitment from an early age. Those with genuine enthusiasm were always respected by him, as he had a difficult road to Hollywood. The scholarship fund will do double duty. It will give financial aid to deserving students and connect them with industry veterans who have been mentored by Gene Hackman. Keeping the bond between family and fans alive is the #1 priority for the three Hackman siblings. They consider their dad an essential cog in the wheel of Hollywood, in addition to being a member of the Hackman family. They are carrying on their father's work by sharing Gene Hackman's story, planning memorial services, and making sure that people remember him. Elizabeth Hackman expressed with a grin that he may be gone, but his teachings, voice, and legacy will endure forever. The vow is accompanied by a commitment from his offspring, who are entrusted with the responsibility of carrying on the legacy of a legendary figure. There is no longer any tranquility in the Hackman household. Rather, it is shrouded in an unseen cloud of strain. Nobody knows their whereabouts, activities, or most crucially, how they will deal with reality, despite the fact that they are the center of public attention. The dearth of comment has not stopped the deluge of spectacular headlines, speculations, and tales in the media. They attract greater attention and curiosity from the media in their pursuit of information in proportion to their level of secrecy, which in turn increases the amount of conjecture around them. There has never been peace in Hollywood, and that is particularly true for movie greats like Gene Hackman. No one knows it better than his family. Countless dramatic headlines, panicked phone calls from reporters, and even made-up reports from unknown sources plagued them in the days following Hackman's death. According to one tabloid, his children couldn't agree on whether their father should be honored publicly or privately during the burial. They clashed over the details. Elizabeth Hackman, who has shied away from the spotlight in Hollywood, venting to a close friend, "They don't know anything about us, but they write as if they are part of the family," read these lines and couldn't contain her rage. Leslie, her sister, had also become weary of the public eye, despite her familiarity with the entertainment world from her many years of television employment. "It's amusing how people find ways to discuss even death," she moaned. But the eldest son, Christopher, decided to keep quiet so he could shield his family from gossip. However much he tried to protect himself, the weight of public opinion was always there. Amidst all the mayhem, some genuine fans did get to offer their sympathies. In honor of Gene Hackman, thousands of tributes were posted online. The encouraging interviews and classic movie clips were shared extensively. Gene Hackman was more than just an actor. He was a legend, a storyteller, and an integral part of our lives, according to one admirer. "With his family we grieve, but we will also remember him and his work." Not only were tributes paid, but the topic of what Hackman's family would do next also arose. Is a public monument in the works, or will they maintain tight confidentiality? Despite the lack of an official response, the topic continues to be discussed. Several individuals have contacted the family of Hackman to express their support for planning a memorial service, including Clint Eastwood and Dustin Hoffman, who were among Hackman's former pals. But whether this will really take place is anybody's guess. Little do people know, loss is more than simply anguish. It's a path. Those who are forced to endure it in the spotlight have an even greater challenge. Even Christopher, the rock of the family and a man of unwavering strength, felt the weight of it all. Chris always wanted to control everything, but this time he couldn't, and it made him feel helpless, his close friend revealed. Elizabeth, afraid that the media would tarnish the image she had always held dear of her father, avoided newspapers and headlines that mentioned him. Even though Leslie was comfortable sharing the principles her parents instilled in her, she was nervous about making her public debut. She explained, "I know my father wanted us to be strong," but added, "But sometimes I just wanted to escape from it all." Everyone copes with grief differently, but hiding won't work indefinitely. What matters most to the Hackmans is not public expectation, but their own desires. They hope to honor their father with a modest ceremony that would have delighted Gene Hackman, one that is heartfelt and genuine rather than showy and pompous. Even if they haven't made a final choice, they nevertheless refuse to allow their father's legacy be used for publicity. Dad never cared about fame. He only cared about his work and his family, Elizabeth stated, a statement that the family considered. "He should be our first priority, not the whole population if we are to take any action. Maybe that's the most crucial thing." While the public and media can keep guessing and expecting, the Hackmans are aware that this trip is all about them. They will leave when the time is perfect, driven not by peer pressure, but by reverence and devotion to their great father. The Hackman family persevered through the latter stages of their bereavement, learning to bear the anguish rather than erasing it. They weren't originally planning to use this road, but when it became available, they saw it as the only way to honor Gene Hackman's legacy. They were able to escape the media frenzy and get some quiet time to themselves after months of it. No longer were the flashbulbs triggered by the press. Cameras stopped flashing whenever they made an appearance. The focus instead shifted to more ordinary activities, like sharing a meal or spending quality time together in quiet reflection. After avoiding the online world for so long, Elizabeth finally mustered the courage to confront reality. Listening to recordings he had provided and reading old letters, she uncovered her father's legacy. Rather of causing her pain, these events brought her more closer to him. In his efforts to save his loved ones from harm, Christopher never shrank from confronting his own grief. He stumbled upon an unsent letter one day while going through his father's possessions. "I may not be physically present every day, but that does not imply that I have departed," he read in it. "I will always be there in every step you take, my stories, the lessons I taught you, and the love I gave you, as long as you remember me." Those words helped Christopher understand that moving on doesn't imply abandoning the past, but rather carrying it with you. Leslie, who was always the one to attempt to maintain equilibrium, gave in to her feelings at last. "Do you think that if we keep suppressing our emotions, we will lose what Dad wanted to pass on?" she asked Elizabeth one evening. At that very moment, the three siblings realized how much they relied on one another. Even though Gene Hackman was not the kind to frequently use words to convey his feelings for his children, he was always there for them when they needed him, and they would spend hours together talking about life and the lessons they had learned. This practice has now been passed on to his offspring. They started spending more time together, which helped them cope with their loss while also allowing them to move on as a family. Together, they proudly watched their father's films, reminisced about the stories he used to tell, and teased each other about the times when he was severe with them as children. During a family gathering one evening, Elizabeth said something that stunned everyone. "We may have lost our father, but we have not lost the family he built, and that is the most important thing." Gene Hackman's legacy extends beyond his film career. It also includes a strong family bond that nothing can sever. However, his offspring have bigger plans than merely keeping memories alive. Christopher, who assumed his father's acting career had ended, is now planning an exhibition honoring Gene Hackman. He hopes it will serve as more than simply a memorial to the late great. He also hopes it will shed light on the man behind the screen. Despite her relative obscurity, Elizabeth chose to pen a memoir about her father, a modest but remarkable man who had a profound impact on her life. With her background in journalism, Leslie worked with a filmmaker to create a documentary about Gene Hackman. She hopes that people will remember the man behind the great parts he played, a guy who had his share of trials, but who maintained an unwavering determination no matter what. Most importantly, they are not responding to the media or the public by doing this. Rather, they are doing it for their father. No matter how bad things become, there is always a way to find hope. The Hackmans are aware that there would be lonely days and shattered hearts caused by the absence of their father. While this is true, they are also aware that Gene Hackman would never wish for them to cease. His children are carrying on his work, not to supplant him, but to honor his memory and the impact he had on the world. Because tomorrow is worth living for, and the sun will always rise, they will keep going no matter how long the night or how deep the anguish becomes. In addition to becoming a legendary figure in film, Gene Hackman's biography is a moving account of love, determination, and leaving an unforgettable impression. Every frame of film, the heartfelt recollections of his followers and his family, will ensure that his legacy will endure long after he has passed away. True heroes, even after passing away, make an indelible mark on society. So we must honor Gene Hackman's legacy by carrying on the work he began. For tuning in, I am grateful. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you found this video valuable. We can explore more inspiring tales together. Looking forward to seeing the upcoming videos with you.